The creepy passenger. I've been driving for Lyft for a few years, mostly working late-night shifts. The roads are quieter, and the tips are better, but sometimes you get a story that sticks with you, and not in a good way. One night, I picked up a passenger who changed everything. It started normally enough. I got a request from a convenience store nearby. As I pulled up, I noticed the store was closed, and the parking lot was empty. That's when I saw him, a guy in a ratty hoodie, pacing nervously. He looked like he was on something, but I unlocked the doors anyway. Big mistake. He slid into the back seat without a word and just stared at me through the rearview mirror. I tried to ignore him, but his presence was unnerving. When I turned on the radio, he snapped at me to turn it off. His voice was deep and raspy, and it sent chills down my spine. He started talking about how he used to be an Uber driver and quit after some punks stole from his car. He was slurring his words, but what really got to me was the way he smiled while telling the story. It was unsettling. Then he said, "It's funny how much trust you put in someone sitting right behind you." That's when I realized I was in danger. He kept muttering, apologizing to someone, maybe himself, for something he'd done. I didn't respond, too scared to provoke him. When we were close to his stop, he yelled that I'd missed the turn. I hadn't, but I pulled over anyway. That's when a police car drove by, and he slouched down, trying to stay out of sight. He eventually got out, saying I'd gotten lucky. I ended my shift early, shaken to the core. A few weeks later, I read about a convenience store robbery that happened the night I picked him up. It was 2 blocks from where I'd found him. I realized I'd been inches away from a dangerous criminal. I've been much more cautious ever since. The cabin in the woods. After a traumatic experience in the city, I developed phonophobia, a fear of noise. I couldn't stand the constant sounds of urban life, so I moved to a secluded cabin in the Pacific Northwest. It was perfect, quiet, peaceful, and surrounded by nature. A week after moving in, my neighbor Michelle showed up with a basket of preserves. She was an older woman with long gray hair and piercing blue eyes. Her vibe was off, but she seemed harmless. She gave me a strange warning: always keep your lanterns full, your windows shut tight, and your wits sharper than your axe. I brushed it off as eccentricity. That night, during a thunderstorm, Michelle banged on my door, claiming she'd seen someone near my woodpile. I was confused. How could she have seen anything from her cabin, which was a 10-minute walk away? I locked up and tried to ignore it, but later that night, I woke up to a branch snapping outside my window. I saw Michelle standing at the edge of the woods, watching my cabin. The next morning, a burly man knocked on my door. I hid in the bathroom and called the police. He broke in, smashing things, but left before the police arrived. When I asked them to check Michelle's cabin, they found it abandoned. No one had lived there in decades. I moved out the next day, still haunted by the experience. Some say Michelle was a spirit trying to protect me, but I think she and the man were squatters. I'll never know why they targeted me. The midnight drive. My girlfriend Catherine and I have a tradition of driving from my family's house to hers on Christmas Eve. It's a quiet, peaceful drive through back roads, and we always blast Juice WRLD. This past Christmas, though, things took a terrifying turn. As we were driving, my phone rang, an unknown number. I ignored it, but it kept ringing. On the 3rd call, I answered, and a man's voice said, "Hello, Luke." He knew my full name, my address, and details about my life. Then he said, "I'm not here for you. I'm here for Catherine." I pulled over, shaking. Catherine hung up the phone, saying she was scared. I tried calling the number back, but it didn't go through. The rest of the drive was silent, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Neither of our families knew about the call, and Catherine swears she's just as clueless as I am. I still don't know who the caller was or how he knew so much about us. Every time my phone rings, I brace myself, waiting for him to call again.